Hey, what's up everybody? True Boxing here, and thank you for coming back to get hit with the truth. So today we are doing the what's next on Undefeated Super Middleweight Contender, Christian Mbilli. Now before we get into that, if you could smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel, I really do appreciate any and all support that I can get as I continue to build my channel here. So Christian Mbilli returned and took on a guy named Rohan Murdock on the Callum Smith and Arthur Better B of undercard. And Mbilli, kind of quietly snuck into the number, the WBC and WBO's number one positions right now. I think it's WBC and WBO. Let me confirm that. WBA number one. WBC and WBA number one, which have him highly regarded. So he won by a 6th round TKO over Murdock, who was a game contender. You know, he was slugging it out, but just couldn't keep up with the pace of Mbilli, who just broke him down. And finally Murdock's corner decided to call it, saying he could live to fight another day. But Mbilli really showed to everybody on a big card right here that he's a gamer and he's ready. So now the big question is, what's next for Christian Mbilli? Well, we'll run through the top 10 at 168, but obviously Canelo Alvarez is the undisputed super middleweight champion of the world. And the sad part for Mbilli is there are 2 mandatories in each division that he's ranked number 1 in. You got David Benavidez as a WBC interim super middleweight champ and is awaiting his crack at Canelo, which a lot of people are hoping take place in September. And then there's David Morrell, who's the WBA regular champion under Canelo, who's a super champ in the WBA. So just because Mbilli's highly regarded doesn't mean he's going to get a crack at Canelo anytime soon, and I don't see him getting an opportunity at Canelo. He doesn't have a big enough name. Right now, he'd be high risk, low reward for Canelo, even though he put on a very good performance, and he has been putting on good performances. Last year, he got a decision win over Carlos Congora, who is a solid super middleweight contender, and then he also defeated veteran Damon Nicholson. He stopped him in only 4 rounds after Demetrius Andrade went 10 with Nicholson. And Nicholson took Andre the distance. So, styles make fights, but let's run through the top 10 after Canelo and see what could be possible for Mbilli. So we start with David Benavidez. Benavidez, is the WBC interim champion. He's likely gonna have to wait through May at the very least before he gets his crack at Canelo in September. Would he fight a guy like Mbilli while he's waiting around for Canelo? I don't know. I think with Benavidez, especially with the PBC having good, solid, contenders there that they can feed him, they wouldn't risk it by having a guy from a different promotion fight him. So I don't see it, even though, the WBC is very lax on ordering fights like this, like for a mandatory is what I'm saying, like have the number 1 contender in Mbilli fighting the interim champion in Benavidez. The WBC is not, I don't think they're going to do that. I think that David Benavidez is a big name, and that's why they want to keep that interim belt on him and let him kind of do whatever he wants, kind of the way they're letting Canelo do whatever he wants. So that's where that lands. Then you got Caleb Plant, another PBC guy. Plant, it would have to be worth it to him to want this fight, and right now I don't think he would want to take that risk. I'm going to say no. Then you got Jaime Munguia. That's interesting. I don't think so, because I don't think Munguia, if he gets by John Ryder, even if he doesn't get the Canelo fight in May, he becomes a very serious contender if he gets by Ryder, especially if he beats him convincingly. And I don't think he'd want to risk that top spot in fighting Canelo potentially early next year or even in September if for some reason the Benavidez fight doesn't shake out. I don't think he'd want to ruin that by taking a risk on Mbilli. So I don't see that one. Then there is John Ryder. Now, if John Ryder were to beat Jaime Munguia, obviously he's not in the Canelo running. But if that fight's even close with Munguia, I could see him rematching. I could see him fighting Sergey Derevyanchenko. Not sure Ryder's going to go in against a guy like Mbilli, but he could. But I'm just leaning towards the less likely that happens. I think Ryder would push for a bigger name than Mbilli that's not as high risk, low reward. Then there's Sergey Derevyanchenko. He's a golden boy fighter right now, and he's tied with DAZN. Not 100% about Mbilli. This was a top rank card because Arthur Beterbiev is with top rank, but I'm not sure if Mbilli is in a position to, you know, especially with him fighting in Canada and stuff like that. I mean, would he welcome Derevyanchenko over? Would Derevyanchenko want the fight? I mean, I think those are all questions that I think are likely yeses, but at the same time, De La Hoya might want to see what Canelo decides for May and have Derevyanchenko, if Munguia gets by Ryder, might have, you know, Munguia and Derevyanchenko rematch. Since they had the fight of the year in a lot of people's eyes, they had a fight of the year candidate, and they might want them to rematch for to determine, you know, to keep Munguia busy ahead of a potential showdown with Canelo at some point. So I don't know. With them, with different promotions, I mean, it's not that Derevyanchenko wouldn't be into it, but I definitely think that Oscar would want to protect him a little bit because they want to leave options open. Now, if Munguia were to get the shot at Canelo in his next fight, Oscar might be a little more willing to allow Derevyanchenko to take a fight like a Mbilli fight. But, you know, so I definitely think it's a possibility, but I'm leaning towards the less likely overall that Mbilli would fight him. Then there's David Morrell Jr. This one's interesting right here. With Mbilli being number one and David Morrell being the WBA regular champion, is the WBA going to order Morrell to make a mandatory defense? Because that's what the WBA regular belt was. When you have a super champion, the super champion can pretty much fight whoever he wants unless the WBA orders the super champion to consolidate with the regular champion. With only a couple regular titles still in existence, and with Canelo being, you know, a good solid champion that the WBA, and such a huge name, the biggest name in boxing, the WBA is not going to mandate a consolidation bout anytime soon until Morrell becomes a bigger name. Well, that is where I think the opportunity with Morrell for Mbilli comes into play. These are both guys that are kind of high risk, low reward fighters that guys are going to avoid. That why not order them to fight each other? I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure Mbilli will want that fight, but I think he should, because I think the winner of that fight takes the next big step in the division towards something bigger. And especially if the division turns itself over soon, it's a big deal. Then you got Demetrius Andrade. I don't see Andrade fighting Mbilli. Mbilli's got that just overwhelming type style, and I really think Andrade's going back down to 160. Then there's Edgar Berlanga. This is an interesting one right here. I'd like to see this fight a lot. I'm not sure, you know, DAZN and Matchroom would want to match Berlanga up against a guy who fights for a different promotion like this, but I wouldn't 100% rule it out either. And then other fighters that are kind of sitting there on the bubble a little bit, Eric Bazinian, who's the WBA's #2 contender. You know, they could fight in like a final eliminator. He's also from Canada. That's actually a fight that probably should be made between Mbilli and Bazinian, since Mbilli fights out of Canada. You know, and then there's Yoel Hernandez, who's the WBA's #4. And Bektemir Melikuziev would be a big one for Mbilli to test himself against, because Melikuziev is a beast. My personal opinion, if they don't order an eliminator or don't order the David Morrell fight, my personal opinion is Mbilli's probably just going to keep staying busy and fight somebody out of the top 10. But in terms of realistically, I really wouldn't be surprised if the WBA orders him to fight Bazinian depending on what Morrell decides to do next and what happens with the Canelo situation, because obviously everybody in this division has to do the Canelo dance before they do what they do. They got to wait around to see what Canelo's doing so they can see what opportunities present themselves and are out there, and then go from there. So I'm looking forward to seeing Mbilli again and what he does. I'm hoping he gets a top 10 fight, even if it's ordered before the end of the year. Or even I'd love to see him and David Morrell go at it for the WBA regular belt. So we'll see what happens. But that's it. That's what I got. That's my what's next on undefeated super middleweight contender and top challenger Christian Mbilli, following his dominating 6th-round TKO victory over Rohan Murdock on the Better Be Evan Smith ESPN card that took place on January 13th. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel. I appreciate any and all support. This is True Boxing. You've been hit with the truth.